Hey guys, Kirk here, and thank you for joining me on another video on this channel. Before we get started, I just want to thank everyone who has subscribed and liked my videos, and thank everyone in the Discord who are showing their support towards my channel. It really goes a long way into helping me, boost me to making more videos. So yeah, I want to thank everyone for that. If you haven't subscribed, well, subscribe. Anyway, moving on. This video is going to follow up from the previous video where we created the ability for yourself as an artist to texture scale close to the camera and texture scale far from the camera. But there's obviously some issues that we need to cover in this video with tiling repetition, or texture repetition if you like. Close to the camera, as you can see, it's very evident, like so. We do have repetition close to the camera, but far from the camera is not too bad, as the texture is quite large. But yeah, in this video I want to run by a few bits of logic that I use to try and combat this the best we can. This texture is not the best to do it with, but as it's not the best, it's quite hard to break it up. Then it's perfect to show you guys how to do it, and once you adapt this logic, it may work better on your landscape if you chose a different texture. So there's two ways I want to combat this. The first way being my version of macro variation. Unreal Engine's starter content does have its own version of macro variation, but I feel personally as an artist that it creates too much contrast on the landscape. If I have time, I'll show both versions of macro variation, but I don't think I will, because I don't want my videos to be quite long enough as it is. And after that, we're going to use a bit of basic logic to rotate the texture in parts based off a mask. So we get started. So in the landscape master material, in the last video we did set up this layer, and I did leave some homework for you guys if you wanted to do it, to create a second layer. So basically all you would have had to do is just copy all of this and duplicate it down below, and on the parameters where it says layer 1, and in the group where it says layer 1 parameters, you would just simply have to change the parameters down there to layer 2 and change the group to layer 2 instead of layer 1, and then insert your own textures into the texture samples. If you're not sure how to change, I'll just show you really quick now. So on the texture sample, you find your preferred textures from Megascans and the surfaces like this, and all you have to do pardon me, is simply drag and drop the texture into the slot here based on the texture sampler you select. So hopefully you got that done well. If you didn't, then just follow along as I've just said and do that. It's very easy. Just duplicate the layer down below and then plug it into the layer blend node here. So what I'm going to do to start is create a bit of logic here for macro variation to try and break up that repetition. So if I come into my folder structure, go to my materials, no, not my materials, sorry, go to my textures, got a mask folder, and what we're going to use is obviously the macro variation texture. This macro variation texture is the one that's shipped with Unreal starter content. The only reason I've got it here and with a different name is so if I make changes to this texture, it doesn't affect the texture in the starter content. So it's always good to find it in the starter content and drag it into your folder and just make a copy and then rename it. It's always a good workflow to do that. But from the start, we do need to give these some UV coordinates. So my usual way would be to use a divide node with D on the keyboard and left click. Then holding U on the keyboard and left click, you get a divide and text quads node. And then we're going to hold S on the keyboard and left click and get a scalar parameter. And I'm going to call this macro variation tiling. I need to keep my scalar parameter name short, just a personal thing. I'm just going to drag these close together. For this, we're going to start with a default of 2, and then we're just going to drag this into the UVs. Now get your texture sample, just click on it, and in the sample source, just share the change this to shared wrap. It just helps with shader complexity in the future when it gets really large. So at the moment, this macro variation as it is sitting at a range of 0 to 1, which is completely fine. It's quite normal. What I want to do is expose it, so it's got negative numbers and positive numbers, and I want to end up with -1 to 1, and then add the ability to apply more macro variation and remove more macro variation from the landscape. So to put this in a range of -1 to 1, we need to multiply by 2. So you click your multiply in the constant beam vector, put 2, and then we need to subtract 1. Like so. And now we've exposed it and put it in a range of -1 to 1. And then I want to spawn a multiply node, so holding M on the keyboard, drag that into the A, hold S and get a scalar parameter. We're going to call this macro variation amount. Spell that right, yes. For this, I want to set it as 5 as default. Keep in mind this default is not going to stay like this because this will be really intense, but I do like to make it a bit intense for the start so we can actually see that it's working. So now we've added our macro variation amount, we do need to put it back into a 0 to 1. So all we need to do now is actually add 1, and then it will go back to normal, believe it or not. And then from there we need another multiply node, put the add into there, and simply all we need to do now, as it's called macro variation, it's actually a color variation, so we put it in the base color. So we would simply drag from the lerp into the B, and from the output of the multiply into the base color. And if we hit apply, we should now have macro variation, in which we do. Obviously it doesn't look great, but we will change the parameters now. So if you click on your landscape, come to the details panel and double click on the landscape material there, it will open your material instance. As you can see, we've got 2 new parameters there, the variation amount and tiling, which we created. As you can see, the tiling needs to be considerably larger. I may revert the divide to a power node. So for now we're going to enter a value of 45. Just click away. As you can see, it's gone really big and ugly. Ugly? What is that a word? Ugly. I'm sorry, I seem to have a bit of a sniffly nose today. But so obviously it's really intense, which is what I set it at 5. This is more realistic to be at a, I'm going to put a 0.45, and then now it looks like it's disappeared, but it's not. I've just reduced it that much that you can't see it now. Well, you can see patches here a bit. I don't know about the YouTube compression, whether you can see it or not, but I can surely see it. But I may increase it 0.55, 0.9. Oh, there you go, you can see it coming up now. So 0.7, is 0.65, and that value seems to be good. We're still getting bits of macro variation here, but that is how easy it is to add macro variation. Simple bit of logic without using the 3 texture sample logic that Unreal Engine uses. But yeah, that seems to be alright for the macro variation. So what I want to do is, let's just drop that down. I want to get this little bit of logic we created, put it all together, and we're going to put this in a function. So if you highlight it all like that, left control and X, and we're going to come down to my folder structure, materials, landscape, functions. If you've not got the same folder structure and you're wondering what's going on here, this is just a personal workflow of mine, in which I set up my folder structure. You see all that being done in earlier videos on the channel, as the videos in this channel are progressive, from beginner to advanced. So I'm going to right click here, I'm going to go to materials, I'm going to create a material function, keeping my naming convention KM. You can use your own naming convention if you like. I've got macro variation. There's some good reasons why I put things like this into a function. As you can see, I've got my output here. What I can simply do is left control and V, and it'll put the logic into here. I'm going to drag the multiply to the output. On the output, I'm going to call this base color, as it is meant for the base color. You can leave the set priority to 0. Drag that there. Like I was saying, the good reasons for this being a function, like if you have a large scale landscape and you want to have more variation, you could simply just control and duplicate this like so, and you can simply pull away from this, add a multiply, and put the divide into the multiply and then into the UVs, and give this like a slightly large number, like 0.56, and then you could simply come off here, add a linear interpolate, and blend them both together. And you could just use a scalar parameter in the alpha to blend between the two. And what this is just a little bit larger than this one. You can blend them together and put them into the output. But that option is obviously up to you guys. You can do that if you want, to add more variation if your landscape is really large. Just gives it a bit more ability. You would have to rename your parameters, like you could put macro variation v2, like for version 2. I don't know, possibilities are endless, but I'm just going to remove that for now. And where we need to go now is to this multiply node, and we need to give it an input. So if we drag off the B input for the multiply and type input, and it will get us a function input. And here I just want to put base color input, like so. It doesn't need a preview, you can leave the preview, just leave it like that. Then we're going to apply this. Oh, before we do apply it fully, if you click anywhere on the graph that's not a node, come to the details panel and expose this to library, like so. Then hit apply and save, get rid of that. Then we're going to come to our landscape layer. I'm going to right click here and just type KM for my naming convention, and now macro variations available as a function. And when you have it in a function like this, I could simply duplicate this and put it down here, the second layer, and then a third layer and a fourth layer if needed. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to leave it in the one layer for now. So if I go ahead and hit apply, You'll see the macro variation is working, but it's got no color representation to it. Yeah, it's very contrasty. And why is that happening? Let's have a look in there. Yeah. Oh, it's because this input, I've not changed it from a scalar parameter. What that means is, as you can see, these texture samples are here, and they're all texture samples coming into these linear interpolates. So a texture sample is a vector 3, R, G, and B. So these are a vector 3, and these are coming into the lerp. So this macro variation, its input needs to be a vector 3. So if you come into your macro variation function and the input, we could simply, in the details panel in input type, just change this to a function input vector 3 and then hit apply. Sorry about the delay there. As you can see now, it's compiling shaders. We come to our scene, and now we have the coloured version of the macro variation, which is great. I don't know why it's preparing shaders. I'll just leave that for a second. As you can see now, the macro variation is just fine. I'm happy with that. It is breaking up some form of repetition there. As you can see from the bookmarks, you still get a bit of repetition dead on to the camera, but it gets broken up at different angles, which is great. Just what I was looking for. I'm just going to build the physical material. Like so, I'm going to save it. And save the project. The last thing we want is Unreal Engine to crash like it did in my previous video. I've learnt my lesson from that. So now the macro variation is applied and it's working well for me. It's just what I wanted. What I want to do now is, in the same place, create a little bit of logic in which we can rotate the texture based off a mask. So patches of the landscape here will be rotated and other patches will just be normal. This will work really well if we're using this kind of texture, but you can always play with the parameters once the logic is made. It's always good to spend a little time to play with the parameters to get the landscape looking as you want it to. But as you can see close to the camera, the repetition is not really that bad at the minute, just with macro variation. Got to keep in mind with building your environment that you will end up with foliage and trees and rocks everywhere, so the repetition of your landscape will be hidden as well, but it's always good close to the camera to sort out the repetition. So we're just going to come into the landscape master material. I'm going to, like the macro variation, I'm going to create the logic here for the rotation. What we need to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to grab these 3 texture samples and just simply duplicate them above, like so. I'll put them like that. I'm going to comment them and put rotation, like so. I'm going to set my font size to 25. This is just personal workflow that I take. You're more than welcome to adapt it. And I'm going to change this a bit to a green, so it's more standy outy. And basically what we need to do is lerp these textures together, the near tiling and the rotation. So we're just going to grab these 3 lerps and duplicate them up here, like so. And the new texture samples we've just duplicated, we basically need to put the RGBs into the A slots of these lerps, like this. And so if you just want to follow along and do that, that's great. And from there, like I say, we need to blend them together. So these lerps, if we drag out of the out pin of these lerps and put them into the B of these lerps, so like this, like so, because they are the same thing, like the ORD is going into the new ORD lerp, and the normal lerp here is going into the new lerp of that normal. And then from here, we want to disconnect these. So holding left alt on the keyboard, we're just going to click on the in pins of these, like the normal as well. And we just want to move this up here and connect these to these loops. I'm going to bypass the macro variation for now, so we can test our rotation. We can pull out of there into the float 3, and then pull out into the normal. As it stands, we've blended our new rotation textures with our near tiling textures, but the issue is we've got no UVs for this rotation. For that bit of logic, I am going to actually put it into this function that we created earlier in the channel. If you didn't see that video, then either go back and watch it or simply just copy this. But from here now, we're just going to create a bit of logic in here to rotate our texture. So what we need to do now is hold D on the keyboard and get a divide node. Then we want a multiply. And like I showcased in the macro variation, if you wanted to duplicate that logic, in this multiply I'm going to increase this with a larger number, say 1.23. And what this will do is just make this version of the rotation texture larger than the tiling near texture, because we will be using this input in this, so it increases the scale simultaneously, but it makes it a little bit bigger. You'll see later on. And from here we just need the rotator node. So rotator, just fire this into the coordinates. And from here I want to have a scalar parameter. I'm going to call this rotation amount. It's a bit barbaric to use that kind of name in this, but that's what I've got to do. So for this I'm just going to put this at a 0.5 for now, or 0.5 in the detail panel. And the divide node, I want to drag off this pin. It's simply the same as dragging off this landscape layer cards, like so, but I just want to keep it a bit more uniform, like that. It's the same thing. And then we drag off this divide node into this tiling near. I mean, if we move this up a little bit, and I double click here, just in case we add any more, like so, and put this here, like that. And we've still got this bit of logic here to work with. And for now we just need to duplicate this output. We're going to call this MA tiling rotation. What I want to do, as you can see, I've got near tiling. That's got a set priority of 1, because this tiling function there, the near tiling output, is at the top, and my new textures above that. I want my order of this rotation to be at the top, so instead of 1 in the set priority, I'm just going to simply put 0. And that should be that. I'm going to put that in the out pin. In fact, I'm going to pull this away, like so. I'm going to drag off here, type input, and get a function input, and then have the rotation amount. I'm going to make this a default. I'm going to right click on the rotation amount, left click, sorry. I'm going to copy this name, Control and C. I'm going to right click on it now and convert to constant. I'm going to put that here. I'll click on the input and change the input name to rotation amount, and then click on the use as default. And what this will do is, if I've got nothing plugged in, it will use this default as a value, which is quite handy. Like so. From there, that should be fine. For that bit of logic, now we can simply apply this tiling logic Like so, all the way there. Let's change this before we carry on. We can change this rotation amount. It's already set in 0, so that's good. So we can just save this and close the tiling logic, and now you see we've got our rotation pins. I'm just going to right click on this rotation amount and we're going to promote to parameter, and I'm going to go to the front and type layer 1, keeping my naming convention, put that there, and then what we need to do is drag this out pin to these UVs, these texture samples, like so. And as it stands now, you can see with looking at both normal maps that there is slight rotation, and this one looks slightly bigger than this one, which is what we need. So if we apply this now, it should break up the material, the texture, which it is doing a bit. But as you can see, we have these weird spherical looking things because the lerps have no direction. So as you can see though, the actual texture is being rotated as well as the standard texture, but there's still some sort of repetition to it. So what we need to do is create a little bit of logic to throw in the alpha of these lerps, so it can base off itself, if you understand what I mean. And to create this logic for the alpha, we're going to use a texture called Perlin Noise. I already have a copy of the starter content version of Perlin Noise. I have all these other masks, but we're not going to use them for now. These are for other videos, but for now we're going to use the Perlin Noise texture. If you click on your content folder, sorry, let's open this up. On your content folder in your folder structure, and just type Perlin Noise or Perlin, you'll see that there is quite a few versions of Perlin Noise. As you can see, I have created my own. Basically copied these two, and renamed it, so if I make changes to this, it's not going to affect the starter content version. As you can see, it's a little bit darker because I've added some contrast to it to make the blacks black and the whites grey. So I'm going to remove that. But if we open it anyway, as you can see, I've got some blacks in here and some whites, but I also have grey in between. What I'm going to do with this logic is make the ability for the whites to be whiter and the blacks to be blacker, and it's going to crunch out the grayscale of the texture, in which we can use the black part of the Perlin Noise to display our rotated texture. So let's get on with that now. As always, we do need UVs for this Perlin Noise, so I'm going to do my usual divide, holding D on the keyboard, U on the keyboard and left clicking, put the texture quads into the divide and into the UVs. A scalar parameter, and we're going to call this Perlin Noise Texture Scale. Like so. This just makes it more evident what we're doing. We're going to give this a default value of 2 for now. We could change this later in the instance if needed. Let's make that a bit neater. Okay, so this is quite a simple trick to reduce the grayscale. So we're going to drag out of the RGB and we're going to create an add node. Like so. And what we're going to do here is just create a bit of blend between the black and the white, so it's not a complete sharp line. So we're going to want a scalar parameter, And we're going to put purling noise blend as a name for the parameter. And with this, you want an extremely small number value, if you like. So for now, I'm going to put 0.002 as a default. We could change that, like I say, in the material instance. And then from here, we're going to want to contrast node. Contrast. We're going to choose the cheap contrast. From the add, we're just going to go into the contrast. I'm going to create another scalar parameter. We're going to call this purling noise contrast, like so. I'm not 100% sure on this value. I'm just going to put a 2 for now. Like so. In fact, what we can do is try this and test it. So if you come to your cheap contrast, right click and start preview node. Yeah, it's pretty nice already actually. With a value of 2, that does look nice. It's exactly what we're looking for. This blend noise, as you can see, if I reduce that to minus, it creates more black. And if I increase it, it reduces the amount of black and creates more white. So for this, I'm going to leave it at that actually. No, I'm going to reduce that a little bit more. So there's a little bit more black. I'm going to put a default value, minimum value, sorry, slider minimum of -1. And the maximum value of 1. The purling noise, as you can see, if I lower that, it creates the more whites, or creates more of a sharper blend between them, like so. But if I increase this now, yeah, looks quite nice like that. So for this, I'm going to set a max of 2 and a minimum of 0.1234 zeros and 1. If you've been following along on my channel, you know that's my default slider minimum. I'm going to stop previewing this node. And as it stands, we have our mask set up. And so what I want to do is drag off these and put them in the lerp alphas, like so, like so. And yeah, and that's our mask for the blending of the lerps. I'm going to apply this. We are going to test this out now on the landscape. Save it, just in case. And that has it's rotated, but I'm still getting them blotches here. That's a bit strange. I wonder what that could be. But as you can see, apart from these twirls there, which I'm going to try and combat with our material instance, you can see the tiling here is definitely rotated, and the repetition is evident as you look further away. But up close to the camera, if you're close to it like you would be in your cinematic or whatever, the rotation is definitely worked, and it is definitely kicking in. We've rotated the textures close up. But if I open the material instance, I've got quite a few parameters to play with here. So the rotation amount, and there you go. It's just moving these about. I increase this to a fairly large number, like 20. And now it's got rid of them swirly, weird looking bits in the texture, which is great. It's definitely rotated. The purling noise blend, let's just increase that a little bit. You can see there what it's doing is blending between the blacks, the white, and then if I lower it, it's blending into the blacks, which is great. So you want to keep this in the medium or middle value. So you want either a minus low number or a plus low number. like so. The more I increase it, the more uniform it becomes, like so. And then the Perlin noise scale, I can increase this, like so, give it a fairly large number, like so. As you can see, it's building up now. If I do this, it is more broken up. And we're going to reduce the contrast a bit, see what this does. We'll just leave that at that volume, rotation. As you can see now, when I rotate, there is patches there that are rotating and patches that are not. And that is to do with the scale, Perlin noise scale. I want that to be a lower number actually, 25. And now the patches won't be that evident. There you go, that's more evident of what I want. But yeah, the minute, like I said at the start of the video, this texture is not a great texture for this because you will always get repetition from it. But I wanted to use the texture to show that up close to, as we've blended it with the tiling near, that up close, you can really break up the repetition a whole lot. And in the future, when you add, let's see what them normals look like. So if I hold right Alt and L, I get to move my sunlight. Let's do this. Yeah, them normals are alright. I mean, we could increase them, but we're doing that in the next video. I'm going to give this a few more parameters. Yeah, them normals look okay. Like so. Just going to go back up. I'm going to give it a bit of shadow. But yeah, as it stands, I'm happy with the rotation of this texture. Personally, yourself, you could still get on there and rotate it some more so you can further break it up. You can also come into the logic here. You can, like the macro variation, you can lerp this logic together and set different values, like give it a different rotation. There's a lot you could do with this logic, even though it's just a basic bit of logic. There's a lot you could do with it, and blend them together and then put them in an alpha. Like you could create another lerp, like I showed you with the macro variation, blend two sets of logic together and then just a scalar parameter off here, and that will just blend between 0 to 1. So 0.5 will blend them completely together, and so on and so on. I'm not going to go through all details like that just now. But for now, let's add our macro variation back in. Right, so go to apply, click save, and now we have rotation on our texture, and we also have macro variation added. So if I bring our thingy back up, you can now see we have our macro variation amount. So if I increase this, like so, you can see it's now becoming evident on the texture. So I give this a value 0.9. I'm going to increase the tiling to a large number, like so. I mean, you could keep it low, it doesn't have to be that. So I've put 100. That's more suited for what I want. You could just play with the rotation. It's all about playing with these. I'm going to increase the scale of the Perlin noise, like so. Let's make it bigger, like so. And the contrast, I'm going to lower that and change the macro variation tiling. Move that about. But yeah, as it stands, I'm happy with what we've created in this video. That macro variation amount is too high for me personally. Just reduce that down a bit. We still get a bit of blotches. You can see the repetition still. We could go deeper into this, but I don't want that kind of video. would easily be an hour or two long to create more logic to reduce repetition on tiling. But like I said earlier, you could just duplicate these and create even more logic. In fact, before we finish there is something I've noticed. We need to drag out of the red pin. At the minute we're just using a standard cheap contrast, whereas we was using the RGB. If you right click and put contrast, you've got an RGB cheap contrast there, but that's a bit expensive for the GPU, whereas just a cheap contrast is a little bit more cheaper, but all you have to do is pull it out the red pin. And now that really should work a little bit better than the RGB, but as you can see, it's not. Lower this a bit more so we get more variation, like so. Yeah, now there's reduced repetition, it's all rotated and it looks great. But for now, that's this for this video. In the next video, we're going to be looking at putting all our logic we've got here into its own little functions. Like this will go into its own function, the texture samples will go into its own function, the distance styling, we're going to put that in its function. Like so, we'll put them in its function and create inputs, and then these could go in its own function with that mask, and it will drastically reduce the actual mess on the layer. Even though it doesn't look too bad, when we come to adding more controls to our normals, our roughness and our base color, this is going to be an actual jumbled mess. So in the next video we're going to look at putting all this into functions, and then what we'll have an outcome of is just one node here, one function with the layer into the layer one and the height. So yeah, if working with functions you want to learn more about that, then I'd definitely subscribe and do a thumbs up, as that will be the next video. But for this, thank you for watching this. If you watched to the end, please like and subscribe, that will help me a lot. But this is Kirk signing off. Thank you.